Hi, I'm Sasha Moore, and I'm delighted to speak with Chelsea Deacon from Mr. Mentor. So great to see you, Chelsea.
Hi, Sasha. Lovely to be here.
Oh, we'll see about that. So, Chelsea has been the most extraordinary networker and introduced me to so many of the amazing people who have interviewed or pre-interviewed leading up to the webinar next Friday, The Power of Authenticity. And I thought it was only fair, as Chelsea had introduced me to numerous contacts, that I also got her view about this really, really important and ever elusive and evolving topic of authenticity. So Chelsea and I were just chatting offline about the many dimensions that really shape your perception, shape your view of self, and how those external perceptions can be harnessed, and equally when you reject them. And off the back of that, really leaning into the fact that this whole notion of being authentic is such a journey, and it's all of these micro choices that you're making all the time. And we were also just sort of saying that with experience, you become more aware of them. But my goal with this webinar and with these interviews is whether you're 18 or 80, that you're starting to now, or we're now creating an environment of a greater self-awareness, that we can start to address what's shaping our perceptions and therefore empowering decisions. So Chelsea, we were just talking about in particular the role of expectations and where those expectations come from and where we accept or reject those expectations in terms of really tuning into who we are authentically. Where have you made decisions to either embrace the environments and the experiences that you've had, and equally where have you rejected those in terms of connecting with who you feel is your authentic self?
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because I think if you're in a role where you're quite publicly visible, Zarko Jokic likens it to almost being like on TV occasionally. That's what LinkedIn and some of these other platforms are like. And I remember very early on joining the industry, I heard someone mention my name at an event and they said, "Oh, she's a bit of a BI." Yep. And I thought, oh, wow, I hadn't actually heard myself spoken about like that before. And so I walked up to this person and they said, oh, but you can just tell by her photo online. And that person then sort of connected. And I said, I don't think we've actually met before. And I introduced myself. And we got into this conversation, and I could have taken it in a really negative way. And I just said, what made you think that? Because, I try and bring my whole self to work and I try and connect with people. And they said, well, actually, you're not very approachable in your photos. And I thought, that's just the perception that someone has based on corporate headshots. So I took it upon myself, took a leaf out of many people's books and went and got some photos that I loved. I love color, not that I'm wearing color today, but I like being bright and happy. And so that was one that I chose to embrace. And I ditched the corporate headshot and I went and got a photo that represented who I was. And it was amazing how many people said, oh, I love the photo. And so being in environments and just sort of listening and, asking that person, did you have a bad day? And, next time, feel free to, if I've said something to offend you, raise it with me.
It's
So
so interesting, isn't it, how quick people are to judge, and and yes, 100% in financial services, but I think it's universal, and I think particularly females, we're bred to do that. So breaking that cycle is really difficult. And one thing that enabled me to really tap into my authentic self was, on that note, to make the decision quite a number of years ago now to genuinely reject any perception. So to genuinely not seek validation for anything, because I realized that it was the wrong metric of success. If I was waiting for somebody to say, oh my God, did you do this tremendous job at whatever, and that didn't come, that would just take away that moment of pride for me because it hadn't been recognized. So I made the decision to let go, genuinely let go of what somebody thought about me, and to remove any level of validation or recognition. And since doing that, and it has taken so long to actually do that, to the point that it doesn't even cross my mind what someone thinks of me. Like it genuinely doesn't. And I applaud you for having that response when somebody had that reaction to you, because I get that the whole time. And I'm like, you know what? Sure, I can absolutely be that person. Have I been that person to you? Or would I choose to be that person just unintentionally? Of course not. So when I now hear that, I do exactly the same and to say, look, I'm wondering why. And usually, and to your point, usually it's as a result of an insecurity from their perspective, and they'll either retain it or they'll let go of it. But I do think that it's really interesting that you've taken that, what could have been perceived as a really negative comment that you rightly could have had a negative response to, and then gone, you know what, I'm not owning this how I feel comfortable, and reversed the situation.
Yeah, and it's a really hard thing to do. And I think, 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't have done that. And that probably comes into the embrace piece for me. So another piece of advice I had from sort of a mentor was just, for the things that you find uncomfortable, say yes and try and embrace them. And I'm not a natural public speaker. I like to think of myself as an introverted extrovert who's had to learn how to be an extrovert in an environment where, you have to be out and about and meet people. And I am very much more comfortable being in my home with my Ugg boots on and, spending time with my kids. But I chose to embrace opportunities where I was invited to speak at events. And I remember just, really overthinking every presentation that I had to do. And then I had someone say to me after a session, if one person out of that room walks away hearing a message that they hadn't heard before or taking away a piece of advice that helps them, then wasn't that worth it? So now I choose to embrace situations that make me feel uncomfortable if I feel that I can add value, and in environments where I really don't want to be. So if it's, late after hours, there's going to be a lot of alcohol and it doesn't align with, what I want to do. I don't do those things, but I definitely do a lot more public speaking than I ever did.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
And I think that, on that note, it's always flexing, right? It's flexing what feels right, and it's flexing, do I want to choose to do this or not, and why? And where does that not really align with what serves me, versus where can I be uncomfortable and then add value? And I think it's such a tremendous way to look at it. And I think a lot of the time, and the more I've explored this whole notion of authenticity, it's a moving target. But I think that, just as you were saying, your priorities help you, I would expect, remain centered. And so therefore working out how your values and priorities and environments, whether they serve you and whether you can serve the people who you'll be engaging with, that then also starts to really help define your core. So, and I think off the back of that, being very clear with yourself of what you are going to commit to and why, and equally what you're going to choose not to by default, is really a key part of that decision making and process.
Yeah, and I think within the industry, it's one of those things where it can feel a little bit tate. So going back to being authentic, I made a really conscious decision that I was going to be purposeful in everything that I chose to attend this year. So now I choose to attend events where I know that I will equally get something out of it, as much as, you know, if I'm being invited to do a presentation, that, you know, that person will also get something out of it. So I try and have these, you know, mutually beneficial experiences now, rather than just going along to something without sort of understanding why I'm required. And that's not always easy in a role, you know, if you're paid to go to events. But I'm really fortunate here that, you know, I sort of went to Brett, who owns Mr. Mentor, and said, I really want to run these CPD sessions because I feel like there are gaps. And then I'm a guest on other people's CPD sessions, and you're able to sort of have this give and take reciprocity where it's, you know, you feel like you're adding value. And now it's the same in my personal life. So, you know, we don't do that enough either, where, you know, you've got that friend who calls up and the first 5 minutes is they're telling you about everything that went wrong. So I try and start conversations with, oh, had an amazing day today. This happened. You know, what was the best part about your day? Or, you know, so you try and have more positive conversations. And again, you know, 10 years ago, you know, if I reflect on some of my relationships, they just weren't like that. So yeah, just trying to be a little bit more purposeful and mindful, I think, now.
I love that. And I think, you know, that's the core of authenticity, right? So, and, you know, thinking in that way is really sort of what my goal is with these types of discussions, because you know, you've just given me such a different insight in terms of purpose, value, and other, in terms of just those day-to-day micro decisions. So I could speak to you about this all day, Chelsea, but I know that you're a busy lady. So thank you so much for the opportunity to have your insights, and I look forward to seeing you on the 18th.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Sasha.